Well, good morning, everybody. I was watching my cat Gracie this morning, and watching her, thoughts about safety came to mind. This is a time for sure where so many of us don't feel safe. There are various reasons. Directly, right here on the Big Island, it's the volcano. Now, most of us that live here are enjoying this. Really, most of us are. Although the tourists, I understand, a lot of the tourists have been canceling reservations here because they're scared of the volcano, not knowing, as much as the locals do about the subject here. And, you look out there in the world and you see the war in Ukraine. It's almost irresponsible to sit here feeling perfectly smug and safe in the United States as we are right now, because it doesn't have to be that way. I don't think Canada's going to try to penetrate into Michigan anytime soon, but, stuff happens. It's a global society at this point, so we're blessed. We're very lucky that things are the way they are. And, of course, we've still going through this darn virus pandemic thing. It hasn't shut down. I saw we had over 1,000 new cases reported in Hawaii this last week. A few more deaths. And the hospitals tend to be pretty filled up, so it hasn't gone away anywhere. Well, I would say that anybody in their right mind ought to be kind of scared of the situation, but the virus itself disturbs the way people think, and it can, in quite a percentage of long haulers, induce anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of which enhance fear. And that's global. And we're seeing it right now in the streets. Okay, we're seeing it. People are reacting. But, back to my cat. I was watching Gracie this morning as she was hanging around the porch and climbing up on the railings over there, and she saw some little gecko, and she's playing around and stepping through Ellen's orchids, and all this. And Gracie feels perfectly safe here. Right, Gracie? There she is. Just came back. Got herself a prey there too. I think it's a mouse. Oh, good kitty. Anyway, so she was obviously just exuding this feeling of comfort being here. This wasn't always the case with her. When she first arrived and showed up on our porch, she was starving. She'd eaten all the mice on the farm. She had kittens under the shed she was trying to nurse. She was pregnant again. She had worms. She had fleas. Yeah, you name it. And she was the smallest cat in the neighborhood. And so every other cat would be taking advantage of her and pushing her around and so on. This is the case with her. Well, when she showed up here and she asked for food, lizards make her sick. She can't live on them, and she had to nurse the kittens yet. So we gave it to her. It was clear to me the first night that this feral cat came up to our house, and then that evening, as I'm sitting on the porch watching the stars, she spent the whole evening sitting at my feet. She didn't know me, although cat seems to assess people pretty well, this I've noticed. And she'd been watching me for a long time around the farm. I guess she'd figured I was pretty safe. And I was also the biggest guy around. That's the point. This is the littlest cat I've ever seen, and I was the biggest guy she'd ever seen. And so she'd sat there, and she did that because she was security. I've been her security blanket ever since. She sits near me all the time. Anytime anything goes wrong, first place she runs is right to my feet and then growls, But watching her this morning, I could tell there's a shift. When she first got here, she did not know how to play. Catnip had almost no effect on her. She was all business. That was it. She'd been out there in survival, and everything was in survival mode. It was an adrenaline state. You could tell by the way she breathed. It was too rapid. You could tell by the constriction of her pupils, even, that she was under stress. Well, little by little by little by little, that's gradually started to go away. Gracie's brain's beginning to rewire itself around a whole new life here, where she's protected. We take care of her, we feed her, whatever. She has realized that she is safe, and she has really almost nothing to worry about. At least nothing that Gracie can imagine. She's not worried about the idiot in North Korea with the bad haircut and his missiles, None of that matters to her. She doesn't understand the problems with the cats in Ukraine, So, always they say, what is it? They say, it's kind of a mean thing, but, as they say, ignorance is bliss, in a sense, Gracie only sees the world of mice and birds and, cat food and Bill and Ellen and so on. Well, the cat feels safe today, and she just exudes it. You can feel it, Everything's changed about her, She even talks more than she used to. She used to be afraid to meow. Yeah. I suspect from her actions that she had experience with people. I think this is the case, that she must have had a home at one time, lost it, went feral, and then regained one here, because she seemed to be just a little too smart about some of the home and human interaction things, like litter boxes and, this kind of stuff. Just a little too smart, in my mind, for a cat that had never been in a house. She adapted to it very well, quickly. We didn't have a lot of problems there. Teach her not to sharpen her claws in Ellen's chair, It was pretty limited. Well, as I said, though, it's feeling safe. She feels safe. She isn't really safe. I mean, to the limits of what you can imagine, yeah, she is. But nobody here is ever safe. Wise people have often said, no one gets out of here alive. Yeah, that's right. You're all dead. Face it. And, so we'd be idiots in this world to run around and go, what, me worry? Oh, man. But, feeling safe is a feeling. And so it's involved with human emotions and brain wiring and a lot of body chemistry, hormones and whatnot, flight or fight, adrenaline reaction, panic mode, constant anxiety. A lot of us tend to live in a very, very anxious state, and so it's almost as if you put a round in the chamber and you got your finger on the trigger with the safety off. That's kind of the way it is, because you're just waiting for something, because you're anxious. Your adrenaline levels are elevated, and you're scared. Well, it doesn't do much good to tell a person who's scared that it's all in their mind. Okay? But unfortunately, that's 90% of it, really, because what goes on with us is the world is a very high percentage only human thought and memory. It's been proven that with our eyes, well, it's really what most of us use, really, to take in the world and see our reality, Well, the eyes, when they take in image from the outside world, by the time it gets into the brain and is processed, we're only using about 20% of what the eye took in. The rest of what we're seeing is from memory. It's our thoughts. So, with that in mind, 80% of the world in front of us is an illusion, for better or worse, depending how good you are at interpreting reality. And frankly, I don't know how good most of us are. We have these genetic codes, things that as we grew up in this planet, from seed gathering apes or whatever the process, to the point where we struggled for survival, hunting big game during the Ice Age, and stuff like that. Life was exceedingly dangerous, and it's a pretty good chance you didn't live very long if you slipped up just a little bit. Even a good-sized cut could put you down due to infections, and so on. So, life was tenuous, hanging in the balance, and our genetic code was written to that. The change into the safety of an industrial society as we know it today, with medicine and science and so on, that change is very short compared to the rest of human history. So actually, our bodies tend to react to most of the rest of human history most of the time rather than the current state. And so we're oftentimes, living in a world with smartphones, computers, and EV cars and whatnot. And but part of our brain wiring and part of our body, literally, is somewhere back in the Stone Age. The signal of fear arising, is pretty much the indicator light on the dashboard of life. It says, "Uh-oh, better check something under the hood." Now, just because the light came on doesn't mean there's anything really critically wrong. Maybe I let it slip down a quart of oil, or who knows. Maybe the sensor is broken. Don't think that one ever. But, there's a lot of possibilities here. It doesn't necessarily mean the world's come to an end because the idiot light came on. Yet, what happens to a lot of us is oftentimes we don't even know where the hood release is. We don't know how to open the hood, and we don't know what to look for. And so instead, we react to the light. We react to the sensation of fear. Well, fear feeds on itself. Yes, some smart people in the 20th century, bright man once said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." It's really true. Yeah, because it goes around and around and around and around. If you get it wound into your head, it happens to become brain wiring. Yeah, the normal way you will think and react tends to go in the way that you generally think and react. So one of the reasons that Bill is such a smiley idiot and living on a planet where you could die at any second, I don't give a darn, is because I realize my thoughts are my karma, my thoughts are my reality. The way you think about everything is going to be the way your energy spins off into everything else around you. It's a harsh world out there. There's a lot of scumbags, there's a lot of cockroaches, and I figure that we're in a state of mouse cage these days. The population on the planet has risen to such a level that even you will never understand why the guy came into the shopping mall with a machine gun, because what he's answering to is something he doesn't even understand. I do believe it's a deeper, darker genetic code that has to do with overpopulation, too much crowding, and most organisms will go through a cleansing when they reach that state. It's part of natural behavior. So the way you commonly react to a situation becomes the pattern of the way you think, and the way you think becomes the way the world is, and it also becomes the way the other people around you react to you. Yeah, it spins out. I once had a enlightening experience of wrecking my BSA 650, and during the course of an extended operation to put me back together, motorcycle, for those of you who aren't bike fans, I was under anesthesia for so long that I ended up with a partial case of amnesia. It was rather interesting, frightening, but what it was is I still remembered almost everything. I hadn't lost, I knew who my brother was, I knew who my wife was, so on, and that stuff. But I lost one thing in the center of it. It was the reason why I remembered any of this and why I felt that way about it. I guess in a way I couldn't remember who I was. I could remember everybody else, but not me. And so I didn't want to panic everybody around me. And so I kept my mouth shut. And I just kind of inched my way through it, step at a time, as my brother would come to visit me, and he'd start to talk to me in the hospital bed, and he'd shape his conversation in such a way that it would have ordinarily interlocked with the way I think, okay? The same thing happened with my wife. They'd approach me in a certain way. Well, why did they do that? They did that because I was always approaching them in a way, and they had learned the process of interlocking with my type of behavior. For me, what that did was it proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that what I think creates an impression in the rest of the world and really does make my reality, because everybody else was coming back to me with the same story I'd been giving them. And in the course, I relearned who it was that I am. I looked at a few things that I was, and I decided to throw them in the garbage at that point. And I tried to overcome a few things, But yeah, the way you think is how everybody else is around you. I was at a luncheon dinner, very nice, with the Orchid Society yesterday in Hilo at the Yacht Club. Very beautiful setting. And, well, okay, I'm a YouTube character. So people in the Orchid Society, because they like plants, a whole lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, know me whether I know them or not, because they watch the channel, and some are pretty observant too. Boy, they brought a couple things up. But well, the fact is here, we have a situation where I project something into the world. Now with the internet, boy, it gets pretty big, doesn't it? Yeah, you can end up anywhere. A man from Georgia, that's not Georgia the state, but Georgia, used to be part of the Soviet Union. He popped in the driveway the other day as visiting tourist, watches the channel from Georgia. Very proud of his Meyer lemons and kiwis that he's raising in Georgia. But, my experience yesterday at the Yacht Club is that the people who approached me, they were all approaching me in a positive state of mind, with a smile on their face, because they thought I knew who I was as this green garden guy who's, always talking about alternative energy, better ways to live, planting vegetables and stuff like this. Who can really hate a guy like that? I mean, people who are deeply enmeshed in political beliefs or in religious beliefs, you could hate me. Yeah, because I'll step all over your stuff. I don't care about it much. All right. They don't have belief systems. It's all hypothetical, this universe, as far as I'm concerned. I guess which sort of helps me a bit with fear, because since I really don't know anything, so the more you learn, Socrates made the threshold later in life by finally understanding that he knew nothing. The more you understand, the more you realize, the less you know. And gets to a point eventually for me where I don't believe anything anymore. There is nothing out there that's actually true. All things are just best possible answer. Well, that kind of keeps me in a state of where I don't grip things very tight. I have to keep the fingers kind of open, let the sand run through my hands sometimes, because, everything we look at is just an interpretation of reality. Like I said, 80% of what I'm seeing right now is only from my memory. It has nothing to do with what's really going on out there. That's another reason why we really don't want to go down to fear too deep. It's an analytical situation. We go, okay, I wonder what this is about. Why am I doing this? What causes this? Do I have history here? Was there something that happened when I was 8 years old? I'm not a psychologist, right? I'm a horticulturalist, and even at that, there are finer horticulturalists on the planet. They just don't happen to have a YouTube channel and an eye. There are others that are much better than me in that regard. And when it comes to psychology, I had one class in my educational period on Psychology 101, just enough to understand enough to be dangerous. That's all. Yeah, got an idea what they're talking about. That's about it. So, I'm not the guy. I wish I could impart for the viewers the secret of why I am almost never afraid. Okay. Don't fall to that much. So my brother is in the same situation. His saying after working with the U.S. Army as a tank commander is, "Merrills don't panic." Yeah, we don't. Take a look at it. Think about it. Scratch our fannies and go, well, let's see here. That's it. Yeah, I guess maybe possibly because there's always a solution until there isn't. But we don't know that there's no solution until we try, maybe repeatedly, because not every attempt works, right? And so the way to remove fear is to find a solution that solves the problem that's causing the sensation, So it means it's a charge to action to do something appropriate, hopefully appropriate to do. And that's the other issue, in the garden, people often said, "Bill, you're a green thumb." And I go, that's BS. There's no such thing. No, I don't believe in it. I really don't. I don't have a mystical sense of the green man. It's not there. That's just that, green thumb gardeners, most guys are 80% observation and analysis, but only 20% action, if it's needed at all. And the black thumb gardeners, brown thumb gardeners are the reverse. They observe 20% and analyze and then react with 80%, which oftentimes means they did something that damaged the situation. It didn't help anything at all. It wasn't thought out well enough. You need a little research there, Yeah, I guess fear's kind of that way. I suppose it's the same with the gardeners because they're afraid of the bugs eating their cabbages, right? I might starve. I guess that's a fear sensation. Yeah, I've gone adrenaline out in the garden before. I found myself shooting at mynah birds when they were pulling all my corn stalks up. Yeah, yep, I've been there. Sometimes this stuff, is self-generated because of the way we believe in things. And, one of the folks I talked to yesterday, she was having a little hard time, I think, with my concept of telling her that I say what I speak because I don't believe in anything, and her struggle was between her belief systems and what she thinks she sees in the world, which of course she was a very intelligent woman, and so it's probably fairly accurate, but she didn't have this dichotomy, it's a problem. Because the belief system was blocking her from being able to actually, maybe make the moves that would alleviate some of the fear and the sensations. It's kind of interesting because we put ourselves in that situation by adopting systems of belief and then writing on them. And for a lot of us, it's almost like watching football. Yeah, we get into the whole thing like it's a sporting event. My only suggestion is get a life. Isn't there anything else more important to you out there than running around screaming on the street corner in a red hat or something? Come on. Anyway, there we have it. Y'all can rest assured that for the meantime, until the guy in North Korea sends another missile towards Hawaii, that Gracie's going to feel perfectly safe. And even when the sirens go off, she won't still understand what's coming down on her anyhow. Aloha. Hang loose.